This season's alone contestants truly know how to survive, easily catching big fish and taking down rabbits. These are just basic skills for them. They even make slippers out of rabbit fur, 100% handmade and natural. If they sold these in a store, they'd make a killing. They can even make musical instruments. We used to just get by in the wild, but they're genuinely preparing to live solo in the wild. What essentials would you bring to succeed in this challenge? It's day 23, and 7 contestants remain. It poured all night. The shelter's still damp, but it's way better than being outside. Good thing I grabbed the fishing net beforehand. Otherwise, who knows where the waves would have carried it. Losing the net would mean I'd have to quit early. Now Roland is going to check the situation outside. He hopes to set up the net again if the lake is calmer. If the water is a bit calmer, he might be able to force it into the water. But with the waves so big, fishing is impossible. The water level has risen a lot. The spot where he set up the net before is gone. He has to walk along the edge, risking falling into the water at any moment. Roland is torn about whether to go down. To win this challenge, he needs more food, which is currently in short supply. Relying on the river alone is too difficult. But if he falls into the water or loses the net, he might as well quit the challenge. Roland must carefully plan his next move, so he opts to wait until tomorrow for safety. Meanwhile, the guy next door is concerned about his beard. He wants to try shaving with a small knife. I have to say, it works well, but I'm worried he'll cut his face. I wouldn't suggest trying it. He should focus on his shelter now. Joe's the only one still not done. The project is more work than he imagined. Joe looks exhausted from building. He can only add a few layers each day, and he still has to worry about food. I think he'll quit soon. Joe's already exhausted, but he still needs to check the traps. Since he first got here, he's lost a lot of weight. He wakes up dizzy every day and takes a long time to recover. Joe needs to find a way to get food. If his shelter were simpler, he might have more time to hunt. But Joe still wants to finish his shelter. The good news is he caught a rabbit in the trap. The bad news is it was bitten. Joe was really frustrated, but he still brought it back to eat. He didn't expect things to be worse on the other side. There were rabbit leftovers everywhere. Turns out, it was just too full to finish. Joe realized it was the work of a fox. If it had been another animal, there wouldn't be so much left. A whole rabbit would have been ideal. Now he had another issue to handle. He lost the motivation to keep building the shelter. By day 24, Ewa crafted a unique item to track things. Most people wouldn't get it at first. She explained it was a fishing net, adorned with her children's and wife's names. Naturally, she included her partner, Shinyo. The most unforgettable recent event was a fly getting in her ear. She looked forward to recording more stories. For now, she was making a chair because sitting on the ground every day was uncomfortable. The structure of the chair was actually very simple. First, she made a tripod, then added the backrest and seat. She felt she needed to stay busy during the challenge, or she'd want to go home. Only those who have survived alone would understand how she felt. Ewa was very grateful for her family's support. Without their support, she wouldn't be here. Once the chair was ready, she sat on it right away and felt extremely comfortable. Whenever she had a moment, she preferred sitting to lying down. Meanwhile, Roland was still struggling with the net. She was unsure of the current situation. To calm her nerves, she ate some fish. For now, there was enough food. She was concerned about not having enough food for winter. If she didn't set the net today, she'd need to find another way to hunt. The coast was definitely risky. Roland was ready to fall in. The water wasn't calm right now, but it was better than yesterday. She felt she could set the net now. She had to be cautious, as a small slip could send her tumbling. Roland struggled to set the net in the water as waves crashed against the rocks, making it tough. She was already regretting coming down and had to forcefully secure the net, putting in a lot of effort just to barely secure the pole. This spot was really risky. She'd have to return tomorrow to check the net. Thinking about this made Roland feel helpless. She needed to find a better spot nearby. Then, she noticed something odd about the rocks. Upon closer look, it was a black bear. Oh boy, it likely hadn't smelled him yet. No wonder they had to carry horns all the time. Bears were definitely common in this area. Roland stayed completely still, worried the bear might trail him to his shelter. He really wanted to hunt the black bear. Bagging one would mean plenty of food for winter and almost guarantee his win. Had the bear not bolted, Roland would have aimed an arrow at its rear. Now, he watched from the mountain. The bear was probably in that forest, and Roland clearly wanted bear meat. He circled around for a better view. Few contestants would risk confronting a bear. Roland hoped to at least scare it off if he couldn't hunt it. He took a long detour to try. The problem was, the bear could walk too. When he arrived, there was no trace of the black bear. He seriously wondered if he was hallucinating from exhaustion. Could it have been a crew member he saw earlier? The campfire smoke still lingered. Roland hoped the bear would come to the camp on its own. He didn't want to take such a long detour again. Do you think he can hunt it? The camera then switched to Jillian. He was slowly getting used to the Arctic, but his hair was growing out. He chopped off his ponytail with a knife, feeling much better. It was time to check the traps. Although he had set many, they weren't very effective. Julian wasn't greedy. Catching a rabbit every few days was sufficient for him. He had also set traps for moose, but as he walked, none had caught anything. This was not what he had anticipated. Despite not catching a rabbit, the abundance of tracks made him hopeful. He continued to look around for rabbits, possibly because he was hungry. Lately, he kept dreaming of big meals at home. Every time he was about to dig in, he would wake up, feeling even hungrier. Just as he was lamenting this, he heard a squirrel's call and quickly grabbed his bow and arrow, approaching cautiously. After a careful look, he spotted the rabbit. He shot an arrow straight at it. His archery skills were impressive. He hit the rabbit right in the throat. The rabbit was bigger than he had imagined, feeling heavy in his hands. Now, Julian felt confident again. He swiftly cleaned the rabbit. The shelter lacked ventilation, making it stuffy whenever he lit a fire. The smoke was unbearable. He needed to adjust the shelter, or it would ruin his lungs eventually. I had to go inside to handle the rabbit. Doing it outside was out of the question. It's just too cold. The rabbit's still cooking, and my eyes are burning from the smoke. Guess it's time to fix the shelter. Day 25 of the challenge. Even with the wind, he's loving the view. This is his kind of place. If only his stomach would quit growling. Staying here all day would be nice, but the wind is freezing. Better head back and strengthen the shelter. This setup won't get him through the winter. He wants to use a bigger stone to better utilize the fire's heat. He's been eyeing this stone pile for a while. Can he get one out? It's a tough job. Finally, he managed to get the stone out, but he's even more exhausted now. Just moving the stone wore him out. He knows it's a lot of work, but for a comfortable winter, the fireplace is crucial. He feels the warmth from the stone. He's tempted to lie down and rest on it. After all his hard work, the fireplace is finally looking decent. Roasting some meat in it would be ideal. He's nearly out of nearby stones, and the fireplace is only halfway finished. Next, he needs to smear mud to fill all the gaps, but the temperature is really cold. The mud feels like it might freeze his hands. He tries lighting a fire to test it, and it works better than expected. Day 26 is approaching, and Joe is starving and questioning his life choices, with his cabin still unfinished. If he had chosen a simpler design, he'd be enjoying it by now. Joe is really lost right now, especially with no food to eat. After some mental struggle, he forces himself to get up and work. First, he tries to catch some fish. He doubts the traps will work. There are lots of fish, but he's been too busy with the shelter. Now he's thinking about catching more fish. Joe's survival strategy isn't great. Just the shelter alone has put him way behind the others, not to mention getting food. Let's see if he can finish it before he leaves. Joe has been at it for ages, and at last, a fish bites. The fish fights back, nearly dragging Joe into the water. Luckily, he managed to hold on. Joe is ecstatic. This fish is really big. It's probably the biggest one so far. Joe felt alive again and more confident about building the shelter. Had I known I could catch such a big fish, I'd have fished more. I wish I could snap a photo for my family. What a huge catch! You won't find this at the supermarket. We're set for food for days. Let's clean the fish quickly. The camera shifts to Jillian. Every morning, he feels like he's turning into smoked meat. If this continues, his body won't hold up. He decides to raise the chimney a bit to improve smoke ventilation. Fortunately, there's plenty of clay around. Raising the chimney height seems fine. We'll see how it performs with a fire. It works better than expected. No more concerns about getting smoked out. Jillian is really liking the chimney. Fingers crossed the food situation gets better too. As for Joel, he's been busy making souvenirs. He's made some dice to pass the time. For Joel, wilderness survival is really tough. When he has free time, he thinks of his family. So, he sets daily tasks for himself, making little things. Keeping himself busy, like when he made slippers. He just measured the size with tree bark, then wrapped them with rabbit fur to cover his toes. Although it was simple to make, the result was really good. If he could catch more rabbits, he could even make a cloak. Ewa thought for a while and decided to make a musical instrument from a small piece of the big tree. He thinks his son has a knack for music. Now that he has time, he wants to make an instrument for him. Can anyone guess what it is? Every day here, he misses the days with his family. He feels it's a great motivation to keep going. The first 3 flute pieces are ready. He then cuts a groove at the back, making it flat and tapered. If Yu-Chen didn't need it for a fishing net, he could have made a guitar. The final product looks a bit rough. The sound is pretty good. They say it's a traditional Italian instrument. Any experts care to comment? Ewa gave it a go with some playing and singing, confident his son will love it. He hopes to invite the other contestants for a joyful gathering. Imagining it feels very meaningful. If Yua gets eliminated early, he could definitely gather everyone together. Yua thinks this life is pretty good, though it would be better with her family. It's now the 27th day of the challenge. The focus moves to Cowley, whose fireplace exceeds expectations. Despite the night's cold, his shelter remains cozy and warm. He prefers staying inside. To improve the shelter, he needs more wood. This way, no matter how windy it gets, he won't have to worry about getting cold. He must use moss to fill the gaps so that rain won't seep in. Cowley quickly finishes building the walls. The only problem is that he can't tell the time inside. He might oversleep tomorrow. Cowley is pleased with his shelter, but worries about his food supply. He hopes the traps yield some surprises. Snaring a rabbit daily would be perfect, otherwise, finding food in winter will be tougher. In contrast, Amos remains calm. After all, he has plenty of supplies, with some fish already rotting from overfishing. Still, he continues to fish every day. Even though he has meat to eat daily, the energy expenditure is high. His body is getting weaker by the day. To Amos's surprise, his fishing net broke. Fortunately, it stayed nearby, and he retrieved it. Losing the net would have forced him out of the challenge early. He needs to find a way to secure it again. After some effort, Amos sets up the net once more. The weather is getting colder. He needs more branches to keep the fire going, so he focuses on gathering firewood. He doesn't want to wake up freezing at night. He starts with the nearby trees. Amos believes that maintaining this pace will help him complete the challenge. However, things take a turn at night. He can't find his axe in the shelter. This is really bad. Using a knife to chop trees is out of the question, so he must search for the axe. He revisits the spots where he chopped trees earlier. There are only a few places it could be. Could he have lost the axe? After a long search with no luck, Amos decides to wait until daylight. He feels quite down. He hopes it's just covered by snow. Finally, daylight comes, and the first thing he does is look for the axe. Will Amos be the next to go for losing something? Fortunately, the axe stands out. Amos spots it right away as he approaches. He quickly walks over to it, relieved that no animals took it. Amos's happiness returns. So, when unexpected situations arise, you must stay calm. Only by staying calm can you solve the problem. The challenge has reached day 29. Roland came up empty-handed with his fishing, so he had to resort to gathering berries to eat. No matter how many berries Roland ate, they were only a short-term solution. He needed meat. Just as he resigned himself to eating berries, he suddenly noticed a muskox far away. Will Roland manage to hunt it? Stay tuned to find out.